Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you've got this box, right? Full of old stuff, faded census forms, newspaper clippings, maybe some handwritten notes.
Yeah, just fragments of the past.
Exactly. And the challenge is, how do you take all those bits and pieces and, reconstruct a real person's life story from them?
Well, that's pretty much what we're trying to do today.
Right. We're diving into this collection of historical sources we were given, trying to piece together the life of one man, Samuel Steinman.
Samuel Steinman, born mid-1800s, lived through some massive changes in America. And these sources, they give us different angles, don't they?
Totally. You've got the official stuff like censuses, the who, the where.
Uh-huh. The basic framework.
But then you have these little newspaper notes, and they just, wow, they open up these surprising little windows into his everyday life, the ups and downs.
It's like historical detective work almost. The records are our only witnesses. We're just connecting the dots across decades, using these scattered clues to get a sense of his life.
So yeah, join us as we try to explore this journey, peeling back the layers on this one life, Samuel Steinman's, as found in these specific archives.
Okay, where do we start? The beginning seems logical.
Let's do it. Drawing from those first timeline notes and census records, Samuel Steinman, born October 7th, 1855, Findlay, Hancock, Ohio.
Right. And those early records, like the 1860 census, they show a pretty full house. He's 4 years old, living in Madison, Hancock County.
With his parents, Peter and Anna Maria.
And a whole bunch of siblings. Let's see, George, Peter, John, Elizabeth, Margaret, Oliver, Robert. That's 7 siblings right there with him in that census.
Wow, yeah, busy household.
Definitely. But the records also show a sadder side. Some siblings died young. A sister Mary in 1856, just after Samuel was born. Another, Rosa, born and died in 1862.
Yeah, a tough reality back then. It really underscores the fragility of life, especially for kids.
It does. And the family didn't stay put in Ohio. The timeline points to a big move around 1868 to DeSoto, Missouri.
Okay, so they headed west.
Seems so. By the 1870 census, he's 14, and they're listed in central Jefferson County, Missouri. Still most of the family together.
That's a significant move for a teenager. New state, new surroundings.
And then, just 5 years later, something happens that seems to anchor them, or at least Samuel, to a specific place. Albany, in Gentry County, Missouri.
What was that?
His father, Peter Steinman, died in Albany, August 14th, 1875. Samuel was only 19.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that loss happens in Albany.
And it seems to be a turning point for Samuel himself. He stays there. A few years later, September 9th, 1878, age 22, he marries Maria, Harriet Hewlett, known as Hattie, right there in Albany.
So he's not just staying where his father passed away, he's actually building his own life there, marrying locally.
Exactly, putting down roots. And they start their own family pretty quickly. First child, Lauren, born June 14th, 1879, in Albany.
But the sources mention some heartbreak early on too, right?
Yeah, unfortunately. Little Loren died just over a year later, June 25, 1880. Also in Albany, it's recorded right there, losing their first child.
Yeah.
That's been devastating.
Absolutely. And that puts the 1880 census into perspective. It was taken just before Lauren died, lists Samuel living just with his wife, Hattie.
Right. And crucially, it also gives us his occupation for the first time, butcher.
Ah, okay. So that's where that starts.
Yes, and that profession becomes really central to his story as we see it in the records. Despite that early loss, their family did grow over the next, 15 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph Waldo, born in 81, Lily Ethel in 84, Edmund Cole in 88, and Arthur Olander in 1894, all born in or around Albany, Gentry County.
So establishing a family and a trade, his work as a butcher, it seems like it became more than just a job.
It really looks that way.
Yeah.
The records show him getting into business for himself. There's some specific transactions detailed.
Yeah, like what?
Well, April 3rd, 1885, he bought a meat market. And guess who from?
Yeah.
His brother-in-law, G.W. Shepherd. So kind of keeping it in the extended family, in a way. But that's him becoming a business owner.
Got it. Stepping up.
And then there's this interesting note from September 1892, a public sale record for a farm he owned about 7 miles out of Albany.
Okay.
And the note explicitly says he was quitting farming and moving to Albany.
Huh. So a conscious decision to focus on the town, on the butcher business, maybe.
That's what it sounds like. Like
Yeah.
he's consolidating his life in Albany, choosing the trade over farming. It kind of fits that late 19th century shift, People moving from mixed farming towards specialized businesses in towns.
Makes sense. Doubling down on the butcher shop.
Exactly. Because just after selling the farm, November 1892, he buys out another brother-in-law's share in the meat market. This I'm George Houlet, his wife's brother.
Okay, so he's really taking control of the business.
Seems that way. And becoming quite established. January 1893, he buys a house in Albany for $450.
Owning property, that was a big marker of stability then.
Absolutely. And later records confirm he owned it free of mortgage. The 1900 census gives us a nice snapshot. Him, wife Mary, the 4 kids, Ralph, Lily, Ed C., Arthur, married 22 years, owns a home free and clear, occupation, butcher. Solidly middle class, it seems.
And the newspaper records, they back this up, showing him working.
Yeah, they pop up occasionally. A business ad in 1914, a note in 1906 saying he's working as the butcher at Smith's Grocery Market.
So maybe sometimes working for others too, or partnering?
Could be. The descriptions vary slightly. Meat cutter butcher shop in 1910, salesman butcher shop in 1920. It suggests a long career, maybe shifting roles within the trade as he got older.
Right. And this is where those newspaper clippings really add the human element, isn't it? Beyond just the facts and figures.
Oh, definitely. They show family connections, day-to-day life, unexpected bumps in the road.
Like what kind of things?
Well, February 1901, there's a note about him and his sister Maggie traveling to Iola, Kansas.
Okay, why?
To visit their sister-in-law, Sally Owen Steinman, who was very ill. And then the papers follow up with her death notice and funeral details soon after.
Shows those family ties stretching across states. Even back then, people making the effort.
Exactly. And then here's a really fascinating one. October 1901, back in Albany, smallpox outbreak.
Uh-oh.
The record says the Steinman family was quarantined right from the start. But, and this is a specific detail, they refused vaccination.
Wow. Okay, that's a choice.
It was, and the consequence. Their daughter Lily caught smallpox from a neighbor girl whose own vaccine apparently hadn't worked.
Goodness, it's a very vivid snapshot, isn't it? Public health, community spread, personal decisions during an epidemic over a century ago.
Puts a real human face on it. But the papers also mentioned other things, more everyday family stuff. Son Ralph hurt in a runaway accident in 1906.
Ouch. Hope he was okay.
Doesn't say how serious, just that it happened.
Yep.
Then Ralph's marriage announcement in 1908. And a cute note in 1909 about a birthday surprise for Hattie, his wife, being mentioned in the paper.
Huh. Small town life. These little details really build a picture.
They do. And then there's this period starting March 1910 that's particularly interesting. The records say Samuel went to El Dorado, Kansas.
Another move?
Sort of. To work for a season, it says. The Albany paper mentions him being hired at Nicodemus Market there, and even looking to rent a 5-6-room house.
So maybe thinking of moving the family?
Possibly. The census data from that time is a bit contradictory, actually. One record has the family still in Albany.
Okay.
But another one, from May 1910 in Kansas, lists just Samuel. He's a boarder with a family in El Dorado who owned, guess what?
Butcher shop.
Bingo. Likely the one he was working at. So maybe he went ahead first, testing the waters, or just for a temporary job.
That makes sense. Did he stay connected to Albany?
Absolutely. And this is key. July 1910, the Albany Capital paper prints a letter from him, written in El Dorado. He's getting news from home via the paper and giving them an update on the crops and fruit situation in Kansas.
Wow, so even while away, he's still part of the Albany community conversation, using the local paper to stay in touch. That's fascinating.
Isn't it? Shows the importance of those local papers. Meanwhile, life goes on, and sadly, that means more losses over the years. The timeline notes the deaths of several of his siblings.
Right, the passage of time.
His brother George in 1903, Peter Jr. in 1906, a half-brother Adam in 1911, John in 1917, his sister Elizabeth around 1919. Families change shape over time.
Yeah. And there was a particularly tragic loss noted in the sources, too, wasn't there, involving one of his own children?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very sad. His son, Arthur Olander Steinman, died April 10th, 1917. He was only 22.
And the record. It's quite direct about the cause, isn't it?
It is. The newspaper clipping included is explicit. It says he commits suicide. It's jarring to see it stated so plainly in a local paper from that time.
Yeah. A stark reminder of private struggles becoming public record.
And the family placed a card of thanks in the paper afterwards, thanking people for condolences, a public acknowledgement of their grief.
It's really interesting how these deeply personal events were handled in the community papers back then. Very different from today sometimes.
Definitely. We also see notes of other family visits, like Samuel and Lily visiting someone called Minnie back in DeSoto, Missouri in 1906. Those connections continued.
So moving into his later years, what does the 1920 census show?
By 1920, he's 64. It's just him and Mary at home, still own the house, free and clear, and his occupation, salesman butcher shop.
Salesman. So maybe stepping back from the physical butchering, but still involved in the business.
That's how it looks. Still connected to the trade he'd known for decades.
And then there's that slightly mysterious note from 1921.
Yes. January 1921, he's 65. The source just has this entry. Prohibition stills Coyle's arrest linked to St. Louis.
That's it. No explanation.
Yep, just that line. Coyle's likely refers to the copper tooting for making illegal booze during Prohibition.
Right.
So was he caught up in something? Involved? Just nearby, the record doesn't say. Leaves you wondering.
A little historical cliffhanger. But something much clearer and more dramatic happened just a few months later, right? May, June 1921.
Oh, yeah. A really serious accident. He was 65. Trying to start a Ford engine.
With a hand crank, presumably?
Must have been.
Yeah.
And it kicked back hard, caused a complicated fracture of his right arm.
Oof. That sounds bad enough.
It got worse. The newspaper reports track it. His condition became serious. Blood poisoning set in. He was critical.
Oh, no. Before antibiotics, that was often a death sentence.
It was incredibly dangerous. The records mention family rushing to be with him, his wife, son Ed, and his family, other relatives. They even moved into St. Joseph to see a specialist while staying with his sister Maggie.
Trying everything they could.
But his condition deteriorated further. The infection was too severe. They had to amputate his hand.
Oh, wow. Amputation.
And even after that, the notes say he got much worse and not expected to survive. And it mentions Bright's disease setting in.
Bright's disease. That was kidney failure, basically.
Yeah, a general term for kidney diseases back then. So the trauma, the infection, the amputation, it led to organ failure. The outlook was grim.
Sounds like the end was near.
That's what everyone thought. But here's the truly amazing part documented in these sources.
What?
Against all odds, he didn't die. He recovered. Enough that after weeks and weeks in the hospital, he was finally able to come home in June 1921.
Seriously, after all that, amputation, blood poisoning, kidney failure.
It's quite remarkable, surviving that kind of ordeal back then without modern medicine. It really speaks to, I don't know, incredible resilience. Or maybe just luck. Or both.
That's an incredible story of survival buried in those notes.
Isn't it? And he did live on for several more years. The records show later visits from his sister Maggie and niece Theodora in 22 and 24.
And his daughter Lily, the one who had smallpox.
Right. She was teaching out in Montana by then, but the paper notes her visiting home for the summer in May 1923, shows the family dispersing geographically but still maintaining those ties.
So that brings us towards the end of his life story, as told by these records.
It does. Samuel Steinman died at home in Albany, Gentry County, Missouri. May 11th, 1925. He was 69 years old.
And the cause of death, does it relate back to the accident?
It seems so. The record lists pyelonephrosis, that's a kidney infection, and prostatism, so prostate issues. But it also explicitly notes Bright's disease.
Ah, connecting back to the kidney failure that started after the injury.
Exactly. It seems while he pulled through the immediate crisis, the damage eventually caught up with him a few years later.
His funeral was held at home.
Yes, on May 13th, 1925, then burial at Carter Cemetery in Howard Township, Gentry County.
And the local papers marked his passing.
Oh, yes. Multiple obituaries, death notices, another card of thanks from the family in May 1925. He was clearly a long-standing member of that Albany community. The sources even include a much later obituary for his son Edmund from 1955. Shows how the documentation continued.
So looking back, we've taken this collection of different records, census data, newspaper bits, timeline notes.
And tried to weave them into a narrative, a life story.
Yeah. It starts broad. You know, the census gives us the framework where he lived, family size, job title, moves.
But then those newspaper clippings, they add the texture, the specific moments. Family visits, business deals, the smallpox scare, that horrific accident, the loss of children.
It creates this, well, it's a rich picture, even if it feels a bit fragmented sometimes, right? You see the journey, Ohio boy moves to Missouri, sets himself up as a butcher in Albany, builds a family, faces losses, survives incredible hardship.
And lives out his days in the town he called home for so long.
So going through this whole process, tracing Samuel Steinman's life through these specific records, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
Well, what can digging into the life of one sort of ordinary person, someone not famous, tell us about the bigger picture? How about what life was like back then?
Yeah, the challenges people face day to day, how communities worked, family bonds, the nature of work.
Exactly. And maybe seeing how a life unfolds through these kinds of documents, census, local news, how does that make you think about history differently?
Or maybe does it make you curious about the stories hiding in your own family's past, especially now with so much potentially discoverable through digital archives? What stories are waiting there?